actually, Tick, I think we probably need to take a moment and acknowledge R.I.P. Richard, right? Let's have a moment of silence for Richard. He's sweating to the oldies in heaven, we hope. All right. Thank you for joining me in that.
Well,
all right,
really,
back to it.
It got really serious there. No, but seriously, before we kick this evening's events off, we figured there's no better way to start the evening than to hear from Project Safe's fearless leader, Joan Pretty, come to the stage and hit us with some knowledge. Give it up for Joan!
Yeah. You can't say no to this lady. I'm living proof.
How's everyone doing tonight? All right, well, thank you all for being here. I was a little bit late tonight because I was at a memorial service for a remarkable woman named Hester Myers. The Myers family has been supporting Project Safe for decades and generations. And when Hester's grandson spoke today, one of the things that he mentioned was that it is World Peace Day. The peace on earth begins at home. Joseph Lumpkin, who was the longtime chief of police here in Athens, always said that domestic violence is the incubator of all other crimes. And the latest research is telling us that two-thirds of all mass shootings, including the one that happened just down the road, are connected to domestic violence. Domestic violence thrives in shame, in stigma, in secret and silence. And for almost 50 years, Project Safe has been working to break that silence, to eliminate that stigma, to get rid of that shame. And the folks who were doing it originally, they were all volunteers. They had to fight for every crumb, for every resource. They had to fight. They had to fight for recognition. They had to fight for acknowledgement that this was an issue even worth fighting for. And God, do we stand on their shoulders today? But we have not been standing still. Project Safe is an organization that is creating and collaborating and innovating and doing things that no other domestic violence organization in the state of Georgia does. And we do it with the support of this community. So from the days when people called it a runaway wives club and said, why doesn't she just leave? We now have people willing to dress up like Jane Fonda and Richard Simmons and actually get up on stage. People willing to get up here and lip sync, to be a little bit silly, to be a little bit vulnerable. And in doing so, they're saying this is an issue worth paying attention to. This is a cause worth supporting. And these are people who live and work and go to school among us. And we have a duty to help them. We are all safer everywhere we go when we work to end domestic violence. So, I didn't bring a drink up, but if you've got a drink in your hand, and heck, even if you don't, let's raise a glass. I want to raise a toast to survivors of domestic violence, the bravest and strongest people that I know. To our founding mothers and fathers who did this with so little support and recognition back in the day and built us such a firm foundation. To the advocates who answer the hotline, who work in the shelter, who work in the outreach office, who hold out their hands and walk with people who are trying to create a new life for themselves. And to all of you who make it possible through your donations and financial support. So if you have already donated, thank you. We're going to ask that you do it again. If you haven't had an opportunity yet, we're going to ask that you do so before you leave. Support the people who are up on stage lip syncing so that they can win one of these amazingly tacky trophies. Hand brought by the incredible Ani Fisher. Support survivors of domestic violence. So cheers to all of you, and let's get on with the lip sync battle.
Thank you, Joan. Y'all, I told my husband I'm gonna take a. Oh, he's my husband also. P.S. Jane and Richard are married. But I told my husband I was gonna take a point of personal privilege, and Joan doesn't know this, and I get in my feels about it. But you know, Joan brought up the word stigma, and things like domestic violence are so stigmatized. And so when you have a voice and when you have a microphone that somebody put in your hand, but I think one of the reasons that I continue to come back to supporting Project Safe, I'm a mom of 2 boys that I never want them to experience domestic violence or to be someone that would behave in that way toward another human. I also experienced domestic violence in a dating relationship, and there is so much stigma. And I remember the person that I experienced this with didn't hit me. It was mental, it was psychological, and sometimes I wish he'd hit me. I wish he'd hit me so people would see. And people are living with that every day. And it took a lot of support and a lot of people, because I carried that around for a while, and I said, no, no, no. And then I took a protective order, and it took a lot of things, and still, you carry that trauma, and it affects relationships. It always affects relationships. So I say that because it's important. There may be survivors in this room. There may be someone who's going through it right now, and I think it's important to share that. So Joan didn't know I was going to share that, but I felt pushed.